20 of the world's best doctors stood helpless around a dying billionaire. Machines beeped, medicines failed, and hope slipped away. But just when everyone gave up, a humble housekeeper noticed something no one else did. What she saw changed everything, and you won't believe how it ends. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss more powerful stories like this one. The room was colder than usual, not because the air conditioning was set too low, but because every heart inside it felt the chill of helplessness. A frail man, once known as one of the most powerful billionaires in the world, lay motionless on the hospital bed. His name was Richard Olcott, a self-made tycoon whose empire stretched across continents, whose name once commanded respect, envy, and sometimes even fear. Yet, in this very moment, stripped of wealth, power, and influence, he was nothing more than a man fighting for his last breath. Around him, 20 of the most skilled doctors, flown in from different corners of the globe, were gathered. These were specialists with accolades, with reputations of saving lives when hope was thin, men and women who had dealt with impossible cases and turned them into miracles. And yet, they stood silent, exchanging glances, their voices hushed, their confidence shaken. Every treatment, every drug, every surgery attempt had failed. Machines monitored Richard's weakening pulse, the steady rhythm slowing as if mocking the brilliant minds in the room who could do nothing to reverse it. On the other side of the glass, his family watched in despair. His son Nathan, barely 30, clenched his fists against the window, whispering curses and prayers all at once. His daughter, Evelyn, held on to her mother's trembling hands, trying to be strong but unable to hold back the tears rolling down her face. The nurses moved about in rehearsed motions, adjusting drips, checking vitals, whispering updates that no longer mattered, because each sentence ended with the same hopeless truth: there's nothing more we can do. But what no one noticed, not the doctors, not the family, not the world that was preparing to mourn the fall of a giant, was the quiet figure standing in the corner of the room, unnoticed like always. Her name was Clara, the housekeeper who had been in Richard Olcott's service for over 20 years. A woman in her late 50s, dark-skinned, her hair streaked with gray, her uniform pressed neatly though worn with time. She was invisible to many in the household, her presence accepted but never acknowledged. For years, she dusted the furniture, polished the floors, cooked meals when asked, and often disappeared into the background, living in silence while the family lived in grandeur. Yet Clara knew this house better than anyone. She had seen Richard not as the billionaire in the headlines, but as a human, angry, tired, sometimes lonely, sometimes quietly kind in moments that were never written about in the newspapers. As she stood quietly with her cleaning cart outside the ICU, she listened. Not just to the beeping machines, not just to the whispers of despair, but to something else, something the doctors had overlooked in their frantic race against time. Clara's eyes, sharper than anyone gave her credit for, noticed how Richard's breathing changed whenever certain medications were pushed into his veins. She saw the subtle tightening in his jaw, the flicker of discomfort in his eyelids, the faint wheeze that the doctors dismissed as part of his condition. To her, it looked different. She had cared for him in ways the medical staff never could, bringing him herbal teas when he couldn't sleep, preparing meals when he rejected hospital food, noticing which spices upset his stomach and which helped. She had been in the background of his life for so long that she learned to observe the smallest details that others ignored. As the doctors argued over new experimental treatments, Clara's heart pounded. She wanted to speak, but who was she? Just a housekeeper. What weight would her words carry in a room full of the world's finest doctors? She bit her lip, trembling as she heard one of the doctors mutter, "It's only a matter of hours now." Hours. That word echoed in her head, shattering her silence. She remembered a night 2 months ago, when Richard had come home late, pale and weak, clutching his chest. Everyone thought it was his heart, but Clara had seen his lips swell slightly after a certain dish was served. She remembered because she had been the one to clean up the leftovers. That night, she had noticed a reaction, subtle, but there. The family had dismissed it, thinking stress or exhaustion was to blame. But Clara remembered. And now, as she saw the same signs, swelling lips, slight rash on his neck, wheezing, she knew. This was not just an illness. This was an allergy, something the doctors, blinded by complexity, had overlooked. Her hands shook as she stepped forward. "Excuse me," she whispered, her voice breaking. None of the doctors turned. She cleared her throat, louder this time. "Excuse me." Her voice echoed with a desperate courage she didn't know she had. The room fell silent, eyes shifting toward her. Some frowned, others looked irritated. Nathan, Richard's son, snapped, "What are you doing here? This isn't your place." But Clara didn't move. She clutched her apron tightly, meeting the cold stares with trembling but determined eyes. "Please," she said softly, "I've worked in this house for many years. I know Mr. Alcott. I've seen this before. This isn't just sickness. He's having a reaction to something you're giving him." The words hung in the air like forbidden truth. The doctors exchanged skeptical looks. One of them sighed, shaking his head. "Madam, with respect, this is a highly complex case. Allergies are not the issue here." But Clara didn't back down. "Please," she whispered, her eyes glistening with tears. "I know what I saw before. His lips, his skin, the way he breathes. You're missing something simple because you're looking for something complicated. Please, just check." The room was tense, the silence suffocating. The family stared, unsure whether to silence her or to listen. For a long moment, it seemed her plea would be dismissed, swallowed by arrogance and protocol. But then, one younger doctor, perhaps less hardened by years of prestige, tilted his head thoughtfully. "Wait," he said slowly. He leaned over Richard, examining the subtle rash on his neck, the swelling of his lips. His eyes widened. "She's right," he murmured. "This looks like anaphylaxis. A severe allergic reaction. If we keep giving him this medication, it's killing him, not saving him." Gasps filled the room. The billionaire's son stumbled back, his face pale. "What?" he whispered. The lead doctor frowned, anger and disbelief wrestling across his face. But the younger one was already moving, barking orders to stop the current drip and administer an antidote. The nurses scrambled, adjusting tubes, pulling syringes, moving with urgency. Clara stood frozen, her heart pounding, her hands trembling. She had spoken, and they had listened, at least one had. As the antidote flowed into Richard's veins, everyone held their breath. The monitor beeped faster, his pulse rising. His chest heaved as air began to flow more freely. The wheeze lessened. The swelling around his lips started to ease. Hope flickered in the room like a candle in the dark. Clara's knees weakened with relief, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. For the first time, the eyes in the room were on her, not with dismissal, but with awe, shock, and something she hadn't felt in years, respect. Outside the glass, the family's sobs turned to gasps of joy. Evelyn clutched her mother, whispering, "He's breathing, he's getting better." Nathan, still pale, looked at Clara through the glass with wide, bewildered eyes. She had done what 20 doctors couldn't. She had saved the man they thought was lost. And as the machine stabilized, as Richard's life hung delicately between death and survival, one thought filled Clara's heart. She had always been invisible in that house, in that family, in that world. But in this moment, she was seen. She had made a difference. And deep down, she knew, the story was not over yet. Richard slowly opened his eyes, weak but alive. His family rushed to him, tears streaming, while the doctors stood stunned. Nathan looked at Clara, no longer seeing a housekeeper, but the woman who saved his father's life. Respect replaced silence. Richard whispered, "Thank you, you saw what they missed."